There is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. You'll hear stories about this and so much more right here on Supernatural Confrontations. I'm here today with a very special guest, Pastor Brent Pickens. He had an encounter, a very close encounter, and we'll be getting into that so much more. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. The U.S. dollar has lost 85% of its value since the 1970s when the dollar decoupled from gold, and the government seems bent on continuing the tradition. From now until after the next elections, the government can print as much money as they want. The last time they did that, folks, inflation went up 9%. This means one thing: the security of your future and your family's future is all in your hands. Make sure you freeze the value of your wealth you are holding. Invest in gold with Noble Gold Investments. Gold is the one asset that is proven to withstand recession, inflation, and just about all economic threats. Noble Gold Investments is here to help you if you want to invest in gold. You will also get a 24-karat quarter-ounce gold standard coin for free. Folks, go to noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Tell them you heard it on L.A. Marzulli's show. We believe in it. We've invested a portion of our life savings in gold. And boy, folks, I am glad we did. So I'm here with Pastor Brent Pickens, and he had an experience, and you'll hear about this. I've heard it. We talked yesterday on the phone, and I'm still trying to get my head around what it was he actually experienced, because it's a little strange, and yet it's up close and personal. So Pastor Brent, thanks so much for coming on the record. Something happened to you. How old were you when you had this experience?
Well, I was 14 years old. We had played a basketball game that night. I was on the junior high basketball team. We played the 8th grade game, and I played in the 9th grade game too. And then the rule was we had to sit through the B game and A game for the high school teams. So that ended about 10 o'clock, and we drove home about 10 minutes. And what we saw happened right there in the driveway of our own home. We got out of the car, and I think my mother and dad were both with me, but my mother saw it first. We lived in a subdivision.
Okay.
And Mom looked up across the street facing north, and right above our neighbor's house, yard, was a flight vehicle of some sort, like we had never seen. The space shuttle was in development at that time. The nose of the front of it kind of reminded me a little of the space shuttle. It had some narrow fins down the side, and we could see everything very clearly except the tail. The tail kind of vanished back into the darkness. But it was just hovering, absolutely still, making no noise, above our neighbor's backyard, maybe 40 feet in the air. And the light was on in the upper cabin. There was a lower cabin too. It was very small, but the upper cabin was pretty large, like a room. And we could see an individual inside that cabin moving about. There was a green glow coming off of what I'm guessing are the instrument panels. There was an instrument panel like toward the nose, like you would normally think of in an airplane. But in the middle of that big glass room, there was a console of some sort, and it was emitting a green glow as well. And we could see, it looked like a human standing there. First, I couldn't see his hands, and we were wondering, what is it? Who is it? Is he human? Does he have hands? And then we saw the hands begin to manipulate things. And I thought, well, he's got hands like a man. He had dark hair. He had an olive complexion. He was wearing what appeared to be a uniform. It looked like a one-piece sort of a stretch uniform with kind of a mock turtleneck. It was the cut of what they would have worn on Star Trek.
Exactly.
It looked like it was all one piece.
Okay.
And it was like a greenish gray, almost a military color.
Did you notice any insignias or any badges or anything on the uniform he was wearing?
No insignias or badges that were discernible.
Okay. Let me ask you something. What did the craft actually look like? Was it triangular? Was it circular? Was it like a cigar shape? Was it square? What craft? What was the shape?
I grabbed some colored pencils this afternoon and did a little sketch. I'll hold this up and this is let me see if I can get it in focus. That's my neighbor's roof down here.
Wow.
And I put some trees so you could see where the tree line was. And
Right.
this craft was kind of between the peak of the roof and the tree line behind their yard.
Okay, this is really big.
Yeah, it's big. It was as big as the house at least.
Wow.
And he was up here in this cabin right here.
Okay.
And most of the time he turned toward that middle console. Some of the time he turned toward the nose to that console. And the next thing going through my mind is, who is it? Then I thought, well, if he's human, he would have legs. I wonder if he's had legs, because we could only see him from the chest up.
Okay.
And after a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, he walked to the back to this solid area back here, out of our sight. And the next thing we knew, a light came on down here in the bottom, over here.
Okay.
And we see him coming down the ladder. And he gets in that little seat and he works at that console for a little while, maybe 5 minutes or more. And at that point, my dad ran in the house, and first thing he did was call the sheriff. And the sheriff was like, I don't know what to do. What would I do? Shoot at it? And Dad said, I don't believe I would.
You don't want to shoot at it.
He said, no, I don't believe you want to do that. And he says, if I were you, I'd call the Air Force. So Dad called the Little Rock Air Force Base and talked to someone there. And as you would imagine, they were like, we know nothing about this. They were about 40 miles to the south of us.
Okay.
And so he came back out and he says they claim not to know anything about it. And Dad was a history teacher and the Cold War was still going on. And his conclusion was it must be the Russians. And then I'll never forget what my mother said. My mother said, no, I don't think it's the Russians. I think it's angels.
Angels.
And which I don't know. It was during that time period. You remember when Roland Buck wrote that book, Angels on Assignment?
Yes, I had it.
Everybody was writing angel books, and Mom had read several.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that came to her mind.
Okay.
But that's kind of what the craft looked like. And after he worked down below, he came back up to the upper level, and all of a sudden that thing took off. But it moved in a way I'd never seen anything move before. From a standing stop with no noise.
No noise.
No noise whatsoever. It moved about a quarter of a mile to the northwest instantly, like it was drawn by a magnet, and stopped immediately. Then from that point, it moved probably a quarter of a mile from there to the northeast, back that way, and stopped immediately. And that now it was at probably the furthest point from us, and we could see it. But if we hadn't seen it up close and had come home, we probably would not have noticed it.
So when it jumps that quarter mile, how long? Like a blink of an eye?
Yeah. I mean, it's fast enough that you can barely see motion.
Wow.
It just gets there.
Okay.
And then it came back to the original position the same way. Again, he works on the panels. He goes down the ladder. He works down there. He comes back up. And a little over 10 minutes had passed on the clock at this point. All of a sudden it takes off to that first place it moved again, and to the second place. But that time it didn't come back near us. From that furthest point, it drifted out in the middle of that triangular pattern very slowly. And it didn't completely turn upright on end, but it turned up at an angle, about like this. And all of a sudden, it made the only noise it made. It just sounded like wind and went straight up.
Wow.
Tremendously fast. And it left a glittery residue, which I have no idea what that was. It's like when a fireworks pops and then there's glitter at the end.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like. And within a couple of seconds, that dissipated and was gone. And it was as though he had never been there.
Now, when the craft moved to its second position, so it goes here and then it moves again, what did the craft look like when it was far away? Was it glowing? Was it not glowing? Was it the same? Was there an aura around it? Describe what the craft looks like after it jumps the second time.
I could only see a little bit of dim light on the main body of the thing. There were marker lights. Let me see if I can get this back up. If you look under that fin, there was a sort of a turquoise and a pale yellow light. Those lights at the first stop, you could still barely see. On the back end, I could see a red glow. Not a big red glow, just kind of a dim red glow, almost like a line of red. And at the furthest point, the red wasn't even discernible.
How far from it were you? I mean, so your neighbor's house is in front of you. It's between the trees and the neighbor's house. How far is that roughly?
Well, these are approximately half-acre lots.
Okay.
And I'm standing in my driveway in front of my house.
Right.
A 2-lane street, driveway, short driveway.
Right.
In the house. And so just a few yards, really.
So you're like really close to this thing.
Yes. Yes. I mean,
did the man in the craft, assuming it was a man, did he ever look in your direction or think that he was being looked at or acknowledge your presence at all?
He didn't acknowledge us at all. It was as if he didn't see us, or if he did see us, because obviously if he were a human, he could have easily seen us standing there in the driveway in the light, staring at him with our mouths hanging open, because we'd never seen anything like this. And the one thing, though, that puzzled me in hindsight, he never fidgeted. He never scratched his arm. He never rubbed his nose. He never seemed to change his mind and go back and do something differently. Everything was perfect, not robotic in movement, but perfect with no wasted motion. And that troubled me, because I thought, well, wonder if it was human, or I wonder if it was an attempt to show us something that appeared human. And I still don't know that.
Did the craft have any insignia or markings on it?
No.
Nothing.
No numbers, no stripes. Just the little blue light and the little pale yellow light.
Now, I saw the picture and I agree, it looks like the shuttle, the nose of a shuttle, but you cut the picture off. So what did the rest of the craft look like?
It vanished into the darkness at that point. Now, when it got at the first place away from me, I could tell the overall length. The back end was about as long as the front end from that little piece that hung down.
Okay.
But I couldn't see the shape of it really well. It looked like the back end was a little bit more squared off and not as rounded as the nose. But I couldn't get a good picture of that.
So it's dark, it's 10 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
Basketball is in, in the winter months, in the fall.
Right.
So it's got to be kind of cold outside. Was,
Snow on the ground.
was there a moon that night?
I don't remember the moon, but I do remember the stars.
Okay. And
The very clear night.
very clear night. So why is it that you can see part of the craft over the house and then part of it disappears? Why is it that you can't see the whole craft?
All of the light, when you're in a place that's spot lit with bright light in one area,
Okay.
what's behind that backlight, you're almost blinded from seeing it.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
We could see it going back, but it was so dark gray that we didn't get a real good image. That's why I didn't include it on this.
The three of you are standing here looking at this thing. Your mom thinks it's angels. Your dad makes a couple of phone calls. You're sitting there with your jaw on the ground, and
Right.
you're watching this thing for at least 10 minutes. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
And then it leaves, no sound. Did you ever discuss it afterwards, or did you walk back in the house? What happens in the aftermath?
My dad just kind of shook his head and went to bed. My mother and I sat there and talked about it for a little while. And she recalled some of the angel books she had been reading. I wondered if it was some type of military secret technology, but we never came to a real conclusion.
Wow.
This did strike me in the middle of all that. We're standing here watching this, and I'm thinking, well, it's a man. It looks like an airplane. This must be harmless. And then I thought, wait a minute. I'm standing here in the driveway looking at something I don't understand at all, and I'm thinking, this is harmless. I said, I'm going to be a little more cautious because I was uncertain. That was a big year for me. About 6 months before that, I'd come into the baptism in the Holy Spirit. I just preached my first sermon that month.
Wow.
As a kid, and it was a big month, but I didn't see that coming.
Okay, so now it's years later.
Yep.
You're talking to me. What do you think it was in hindsight?
I still don't know. I mean, my gut feeling is that it could be perhaps government experimenting with technology they got from somewhere else.
That's what I think it is too.
That's what I suspect.
That's what makes sense to me. But that's speculation and conjecture. We just don't know. We don't have all the facts. I would lean towards that. I would lean towards that's what, what year is this, by the way?
This is 1977.
Okay.
This was either January or early February.
So it's 30 years after Roswell. So they
Yep.
certainly have enough time to back engineer, which is what we think they did. And then, of course, another 20 years after that, you get into the Bob Lazar stuff where he's actually working on the propulsion system at S4. And now you come into modernity, the present day, where we now have UFOs in our possession. That's they've admitted it. So
Right. And White County, Arkansas is a very calm, conservative place for the most part, but it's also a place where they had unusual things happen, like some of the cattle mutilations in the 60s and 70s happened there, and the blackbirds crashing happened just a few miles from there.
When you say blackbirds crashing, the thousands of blackbirds that just fell, yeah,
Yes.
they all had like broken wings, and it looked like they ran into something.
Yeah, that was about 15 miles south of here.
Yeah, and I remember that. I covered that story when it actually happened. Wow, I'll give you the last word, Pastor. Thanks so much what a fascinating story. Thanks for coming on the record. I'll give you the last word.
Well, Jesus is coming, and I'm glad.
Amen to that. Sooner than we all think.
Put your trust in Jesus now.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Folks, if you're interested at all, we've got five DVDs in the box set right here. Here it is. You can go to lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net, and avail yourself of all five. It's happening. UFOs are real. Versioning and not going away. This is the coming great deception. I've been saying it for years. Number 6, I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. I had a really good day today in the edit booth, and we're moving the ball. It's going to happen probably in another 3 weeks. We'll have it out towards the end of the month, maybe. I will be speaking at the Go Therefore conference in Ohio. Check that out. You can go to our website. Please sign up for that. It's always great to see the folks. Thanks so much for watching Supernatural Confrontations. Please remember this. Oh, hit the subscribe button if you already haven't. We're hovering just around almost 200,000 subscribers, which is absolutely astounding. And I thank you for your patronage. But just remember this, that there was a supernatural world that surrounds us. And sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Thanks so much for watching.